I guess here you go.
Yeah, this is the first one. It's the first video.
This is the first one, our first video.
Yeah.
So, who am I? I'm Dr. Triffy. I'm a psychologist in Atlanta, Georgia. You're listening to The Seed and the Root.
That's right.
Where generational healing starts with one honest conversation at a time.
Okay. I'm the seed, she's the root. Together we're breaking generational cycles and growing something sacred.
We truly hope. Yeah, and so there's a psalm that says, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, oh God. Yeah, this podcast is for the sons who are still searching, the mothers who are still praying, and the families that are healing one breath at a time. I've spent, gosh, how many years as a psychologist? So I officially became a psychologist in 2013. I became licensed, but I've been doing mental health work since 1996. 1 year before you were born.
Yeah, year before I was born.
1 year before you were born, and you are 27.
I'm 27.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Teray Monaghan. I was born in Oxford, Mississippi. Got 27 years of good life experience on this strange place we call planet Earth. I've been through some dark places, depression, confusion, addiction. But through it all, I've managed to find some semblance of light and wisdom through that. So I can't just say it was all for nothing, you know. So
yeah.
We decided to come together and make this podcast because we thought that it was time to pour out some of that light, you know.
And, you know, as I said earlier, being a psychologist and helping other people, spending years, day in, day out, helping other people as the psychologist. But healing my son and myself, that's been the deepest and most holy work of all.
Indeed.
Of all. And you know, we've been kind of thinking about doing this for a while, haven't we? Yeah?
We have.
Like, do you remember when?
Yeah, I remember.
About
This was back. So this idea
was planted in pain. This seed was really planted in pain.
It was planted in pain because around the time we started thinking about doing this, I was dealing with my addiction phase in high school, you know. And at the time, dang.
So yeah, so you were saying, and I was saying,
Yeah,
that the seed for this podcast was planted in pain.
it was planted in pain, definitely.
In your teenage years.
My teenage years.
So about 10 years ago, actually.
About 10 years, about a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
We got the idea where we should, I actually remember the exact moment because we were in your room, we were on the bed, and we were just brainstorming. Because she and I, we talk a lot. So I've always felt like she was like a safe space for me to, I guess, get out my innermost thoughts and just express myself in that way. So we got the idea where we should do a mother-son duo podcast, and this is like the first fruits of that. Finally, that idea, that thought baby, finally coming into physical manifestation.
And we were struggling for a title. So at the time, I was a psychologist, and you had just gone off to the Navy.
Yeah.
So we would call it Psychologist Mom, Sailor Son. We
That's
know
right.
what we would call it. But, you know, we wanted to start there. And that seed definitely was planted in a moment, well, not just a moment, a journey of our family that was rooted in pain. And I'm grateful that was not the end of the story.
Definitely glad. Definitely.
Because we've been through some things.
Yeah.
I would say it was the beginning of restoration. What do you think?
I'd agree with that. I'd agree. Largely in part because I mean, once you start looking at a situation that's toxic and trying to make something positive out of it, I think that's when you started to hit some pay dirt. I think that's when, yeah.
And then the other thing, with all that we will share with the rest of the world, with all that we will share, another big realization is that this is not just our story. This is the story of many people.
Yeah.
Especially in Black families.
Yeah, this is a story of us, if you think about it, you know. In particular, you know, I'm just gonna hit it right off the bat because one of the main things I was thinking about as we had this podcast idea going is just how my dad wasn't involved with it, you know. And he was around at the time, he was still alive. My dad, he actually passed in 2021 to suicide on Mother's Day. That's crazy. See, look, that's a trip. That's trauma right there, though.
On Mother's Day, he suicided.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
He suicided, you know, and that was a difficult place for me at the time, you know, because I was dealing with still dealing with my recovery from my drug addiction, my former drug addiction.
And that's something we'll talk about more.
That's something we'll definitely talk about. We'll go in depth with that because that's something that I feel like I've thoroughly overcome at this point in my life.
Well, what are some of the other topics we want to hit?
Some of the other topics I personally want to hit are semen retention, definitely the reintroduction. So we can start with that one because I mean, there's a lot of stuff you hear online about semen retention.
So semen retention, what else?
Semen retention,
relationships,
mental health, definitely, as you know, psychologists moan. You know, and I actually personally went to school for psychology for a brief period of time,
and have had
I've had, you know, actual
personal experiences with mental health.
With mental health myself, yeah. That's true.
And
so
that's very true, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, we're talking about a lot, masculinity, motherhood, fatherhood,
you know,
God, grief,
definitely spirituality as a whole,
spirituality, and healing.
That's
our highest intention.
That's for me, what I want this podcast, this mother-son duo podcast to do is bring more healing into the Black community. Specifically us, you know, but of course, as that echoes out and reverberates to the world as a whole, like universal healing, you know? So, yeah, we're not masters at this stuff. You know, we don't know everything. We just have our own experiences. I have my experience, 27 years of my personal experiences. She has her 55 years of
double
nickel experience. You know, so we're here, we're learning, we're growing, and we're inviting you all to grow with us. And to learn and heal with us.
And we're not preaching because
not at all.
Listen, as we dig deep, you're gonna hear some of what we've been through. And this is processing.
A lot of stuff I feel like we're going to be speaking to you all, but to ourselves as well. You know.
So something we just kind of mentioned in the beginning is that we feel like there was a shift, and we're praying that the shift continues.
It's going to. It's like a drop of water in a big lake, you know.
What do you mean when you say that?
When I say that, it's like, okay, so you know how a drop of water in a larger body of water, it has that one drop and it reverberates out.
Like it ripples, like a ripple effect.
Exactly. But if you get that one drop, of course, you know, with something like this, of course, once you hit a certain nook or cranny, is going to be more outpouring. So it's going to be eventually just a stream, and that's just going to cause more ripples, more reverberations, and
hopefully with more reverberations, more impact,
more impact,
right? More healing.
and hopefully more people will resonate with the stories that we're, bringing forth from our own lives.
Yeah.
And then more healing will come forth as a result of that. That's my hope with this. I just don't want to be speaking to deaf ears, And I'm sure with the topics that we're going to be talking about, someone's definitely going to feel it. But yeah, we're just going to see how this thing goes. This is my first time doing anything like this. So
yeah, I've done a podcast, a weekly podcast on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And
it's pretty good. Y'all should check that out, actually.
YouTube. It's called Transforming Trauma with Dr. Triffy. And sometimes I have what I call sit on the couch conversations with interesting people who interest me anyway, people who I want to hear their thoughts. What else do I do? I also write books. I write my thoughts down in books. Yeah. And I teach healers how to use a therapeutic modality called hypnotherapy. Hypnotherapy is where you can bypass the conscious mind and go into your deeper subconscious mind to be able to find the answers for your healing, for your progress, to be able to get to the root.
The root issue.
Get to the root issue. As we talk about how that shift happened, a lot of work, we've done a lot of work, and we continue to do a lot of work around therapy, or at least that includes therapy, that includes spirituality.
Definitely.
For you mentioned semen retention.
Semen retention, yeah, definitely. So as far as that goes, it's my personal opinion that every man, if you're at least 20 years old, you should definitely be on a semen retention journey.
So tell me more about that, because that one I was like, what is that?
Like
is that one of the young bros YN?
Nah, YN's definitely not on semen retention.
YN's not.
No,
is that one of the alpha bros?
No. It's so I mean, semen retention honestly is a multicultural practice. Because when I think about it, you have stories in the Bible where they talk about a man shouldn't spill his seed.
I'm familiar with that.
And then in India, they have a practice called brahmacharya, where it's like a yogi. He becomes an adept through holding in his seed and not spilling it.
What's an adept?
An adept is someone who is well trained in a spiritual pursuit or practice.
Okay.
So they become masters in a sense, just as a result of them holding in their seed. Because I mean, think about it. The world we live in right now is soaked with sensuality,
raw sexuality,
very raw, and uncut. So it's like at this point in time, I found it necessary for me to go back to my childlike state. The Bible has this passage where it says to enter the kingdom as a child, and for me, my personal interpretation of that was to retain or regain my purity that I felt when I was a child, my innocence.
What led you to want to regain your purity? Because you're only 27, so what was happening that you felt like you needed to regain your purity?
Honestly, like you said, I'm 27. I've been around the block. I've seen lots of darkness in this world already. But one thing I never let go of was the light that my young self, my dad, he used to call me Young Toure when I was a kid. And that part of me never let go of the light. In fact, for me, that is the light that I am. It's like, I saw this one phrase online where it was like, your inner child is your higher self. And I truly do agree with that and believe that, because when you think about back when you were younger, you had no inhibitions. You didn't care what people thought about you. You were in your own world, creating your own life. That's what I'm getting back to, and just freeing myself from the whole idea of what it means to be an adult in the 21st century.
So that lines up perfectly with my work. So over close to 30 years of being a mental health practitioner, what I know for sure is that the adult must go back to rescue the child.
Yep.
So, we as kids, yeah, I was your mom, but as much as I was in my mind doing my best as a mother, as much as parents think they're doing the best for the child does not have the language to be able to express 100% all of its needs to the parent who's trying to their best to interpret. Oh, I know my child. Do this, do that. We have our own lessons about parenting and our own expectations about what our kids supposed to do. We think we're doing the right thing. Some of us don't care. Some of us don't even care, right? Some of us are gone, right? Escaped. And once you come to an age of understanding, I 100% believe that the adult must go back to rescue the child and do a reparenting of the child for those gaps, for those places where the parents and the community and school missed and couldn't see because the child itself did not have the language, even though it was in hell, to be able to ask for what it needed.
Exactly. So I'm just giving that back to my inner child in that way. First, that's what it started with, the semen retention. Because, like, for me, I found pornography at a young age.
How old?
I was like...
I know, but how old?
I was maybe 9 years old.
Can you share the story? Without calling names?
Yeah, so I was at a summer camp type thing, like a summer school or whatever. And my friends at the time, we were just rapping, just rhyming words that rhymed with corn. Of course, eventually, we had my friend's older sibling. They were more aware of that type of thing, and the word porn eventually came up. So I mean, it's just one of those things where curiosity killed the cat, literally. But man.
But
it's and that's another thing we need to break out of, because we're adults.
You're right.
We should feel free to talk about things that we are doing, both in the dark and in the light.
In psychology and in addictions recovery work, they say we are as sick as our secrets.
Exactly.
So once you begin to acknowledge,
and shed light on that.
Shed light on the thing that you were holding so
dearly as a secret.
So dearly and full of shame about.
But show love to it instead of being like, okay, this is, you're a shameful person for
dirty, nasty.
You know what I mean? Like,
ugly.
Because that's how I used to feel. Like, I can't imagine a single dude out there who, after he's finished beating his meat, basically, after you finish doing that, it's like you don't feel respectable. You don't feel like you deserve respect. You feel like you've given up respect for yourself. I know I have, personally. So I'll speak from my personal experience. There has been not a single time where I've masturbated that's given me any type of sense of real fulfillment.
Fulfillment is an interesting word. Okay. So what did you get? I'm sorry. Keep going.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. I was going to say, what did you get? So if it's not fulfillment, what did you get?
I got a placeholder. When I say a placeholder, like when you go to porn, or when I used to go to porn, I was looking for intimacy and connection online in a way that was completely artificial. Because you're watching videos, or at the very least, if you're connecting with someone online, you're still not physically with that person. You don't feel the heat of their body with you. You don't feel them, talking with you. It's not organic experience, it's artificial.
But still, you were getting what from it?
I was getting some type of comfort from it.
Comfort, pleasure.
Pleasure,
of course,
definitely,
pleasure.
of course. So, I mean, and me, I come from a generation of addicts, I'd say. You know,
That's an interesting. That's
it's
a
really
powerful observation. But tell me more about that.
My generation, you know, we are a very addicted people. You know, you could say it was a result of the '80s crack epidemic and all this the drug epidemics that came about as a result of well, if we're being honest, you know,
as a result of whatever they came,
Ronald Reagan era.
As a result of whatever they came about of that we don't have any evidence, but we have theories about.
You can be that. You can be the politically correct one on this podcast. I'm going to be the one that's talking to you.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, but I mean, it destroyed our generation, and it didn't just lead to drug addiction. It led to sexual addictions, and you know, lots of different things that we're still wrestling with now as a society, as a whole. It's not just about the Black community, and this is what I'm saying. It's not just one people that gets affected when it comes to addiction or trauma. We all feel the brunt of one person going through suffering. Because if one person suffers, all of us suffer as a result.
That ripple effect.
That's the same ripple, but it's on the negative end now.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So.
Well, you were not an '80s baby. You were a '90s baby.
Yeah, still.
So what was it about your generation?
I have a friend named Khalif, and he said that we live in a microwave society.
Meaning?
You know, where we have to have everything quick. You know, and my problem was that I didn't have the inner tools to deal with life on life's own terms. To just deal with life just raw and uncut. Like, there's some people who they haven't touched a single drug or drink in their entire lives, you know, since they were young, and still been through trauma just like I have, you know. No, I'm not going to start throwing a pity party for myself because of that. Like, I'm 27. Like, at this point, the reason why we're having this podcast is so we can talk about and express these different ideas and bring this to the forefront of the collective
consciousness. Yeah.
Because if we don't talk about it, then who will?
Yeah, and I think I want us to continue talking about it, as we said earlier, in non-judgmental, real though way, where we're not preaching, but clearly, like you're saying, this is my lived experience, you know, and this is what I've learned from it. Yeah, something I wanted to ask you about the porn addiction.
Yeah.
Do you know when you realized it was an addiction? Like, do you have
I don't really know when I noticed it became an addiction, but I do remember when I wanted to stop doing it. I do remember that.
What was going on? Like, where?
Well, I mean, I started to have actual relationships with girls, and I noticed that my proclivity was still to watch porn rather than to actually have sex. But that was because my mind had become wired in a certain way where it was like, okay, self-stimulation was more comfortable. It was a familiar hell. So it was like I was choosing the familiar hell versus the unfamiliar heaven. You know,
that fear of the unknown.
The fear of the unknown. And
wow.
Yeah. And there was one girl that I lost. One young woman I lost that it just made me kind of throw in the towel with it when it comes to just doing things how I want to when it comes to relationships.
What was it about that experience?
I'm not going to say any names, but it was just like she came to me with such a level of authenticity and realness, presence, and a desire for connection that due to my inability to reciprocate, it caused
at the level. At that same level, like to match her at that level. The symmetry
wasn't there.
Yeah.
You know, the desire was there between the both of us. The desire to connect was there. And even she had her own trauma that was not allowing her to fully be as expressive as we could have been from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just one of those situations where I realized that healing and doing the inner work first before I get into a relationship is the only way that I'm going to have a successful relationship. You know, so I just decided to take a new approach when it comes to relationships, especially my relationship with myself, and give up the porn completely. Because I mean, there was nothing I was gaining positive from it in the first place.
Well, nothing. You mentioned pleasure.
Pleasure is not always good pleasure. There's bad pleasure. There's good pleasure. It's like
bad
imagine
touch, good touch.
imagine getting
good
drunk.
money.
Getting drunk every day that's pleasure.
Right.
Technically, that's pleasurable.
Right.
But it also comes with negative side effects and drawbacks, and you know, it's just
like how the older people say, "Oh, I'm all money and good money."
All money ain't good money.
But I mean, sometimes that takes a little while to learn, eh? And
Took me.
pain.
I'm 27. I'm really just still learning that lesson.
Right.
I haven't watched porn in like 200
So
plus
from
days.
9 to 27.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on and off, you know.
Keep going. You were saying you haven't. So you've been on a path of sobriety, really,
Been
like
rewiring
rewiring your brain
Exactly.
from using porn as the stimulation for your pleasure.
Yeah.
For almost a year.
And now it's like I'm better able to deal with life on life's terms. You know, I'm not getting high anymore. I'm not seeking validation from other people. Like, it becomes, after a certain number of days doing semen retention, it becomes a very internally charged process, where it's like you don't have to put on a facade anymore, you know?
You know, I've got to admit that when you started talking about that semen retention stuff, I was like, what the hell? What is... I was like, what is this? Like, because I had never really
Heard about that.
heard about that concept. I do.
It's more of a manosphere kind of thing, you know? So,
Right.
not an alpha dude kind of thing, but just like...
What's the difference between manosphere and alpha dude?
I mean, think about it. It's like a manosphere is like... A manosphere, I mean, it basically is what it is.
A world for men, like
a world for men, like where we discuss masculinity topics, finance, relationships, of course, you know, and basically how men can get the most out of life. Because from a lot of men in the manosphere's perspective, we've been given the short end of the stick when it comes to living in American society.
What does that mean?
When it comes to
or what do you
say
mean
relationships, relationships, for example, or even when it comes to the legal system, like the legal system is more apt to take the side of the woman's perspective than the man's, or her word being that women have been the paragon of purity and virtue for years.
Well, can I say something about
Go
that?
ahead.
Yeah, because women I might not necessarily agree with that 100%. Some people might say, well, look at the recent Diddy Cassie verdict. A jury saw a woman being brutalized on screen, and
I'm not condoning that at all.
yeah, and there was a time when, because men were the primary earners, women were very vulnerable. And, you know, a man could say, well, my wife she's crazy. She needs to go be put in an asylum.
Okay.
Or men would get custody of the kids. You can leave, but my kids stay with me. So it's like things have changed, though.
Yeah, but wouldn't you say things have flipped
They
on the other side?
They have swung. We
Instead
do that
of
thing
become
as human beings.
balanced?
Instead of being balanced, we like
That's
to do
the
this.
main thing that
The
I think
correction went all the way to the other side, where it was almost automatic that the woman was being sided with. I agree with that.
That's where I stand. I stand on the balanced perspective. There's a lot of people that are extremists when it comes to this thing, being like all for women or all for men. That's not possible, because we both need each other in order for a proper for the world to exist properly. Like, that's just how it is. You know, we were created each to each for each other. That's it. You know, so we can't do without each other. It's not can't live with them, can't live without them type thing. No, we need each other. It's simple as that.
Yeah. So as you were talking about the semen retention.
Yes.
And the connection between using that. You've been using that as a tool to help you rewire your brain against porn addiction.
Yes.
Any more thoughts on that? Like, any more thoughts on that? Like, what would you suggest to somebody
who's dealing with porn addiction? What I would suggest to someone who's dealing with porn addiction is to start, at the very least, limiting your use. Because I mean, you're not just going to just give up porn. Porn is a heavy hitter. That's a big dog when it comes to addictions. I'm not gonna lie, that's big dog. That's a big dog. Because I mean, like, it's insidious to the point where it enters into relationships where you could be having a regular sex with your partner, and then it's like, oh, I saw this video, I want to try this with you. Like, I mean, like, where's the actual intimacy in that? You know, because it's just like you're treating your partner like a doll,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's about you and not necessarily considering the
other partners. Exactly. You know, and even beyond that, it's like, I digress. If you want to stop watching porn, start slow. Start limiting your use, get some blockers for your phone, and start looking up semen retention videos. Because I promise you, once you start and start feeling the benefits and the effects, you're not really gonna want to stop. Like, once you hit the 30-day mark, and that may seem like a long amount of time, but time flies by so fast, you know.
What you're describing is on my side of the fence called the harm reduction model. Okay. Where instead of complete 100% abstinence, if you're trying to recover from an addiction,
and that is eventually the goal.
Yeah, the goal is abstinence, yes, but you know, sometimes, like Rome, the idea that Rome was not built in a day.
Of course. And
that it might be too challenging for some brains, really, because it's a brain issue.
And it's a jarring thing to give up pornography, especially if you've been addicted to that for years.
It
was for me.
And you said you started at 9.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, I relapsed many times because of the fact that I was like trying to just quit cold turkey. It is possible, but it's difficult. And in this society, doing difficult things, it's not normal.
Right. There's not a lot of environmental supports for doing difficult things these days, it seems.
Not at all.
Yeah. But that harm reduction model says, instead of going cold turkey, like you just mentioned, to titrate your use down, use less and less.
At the very least, use less and less until you either no longer feel the need to use pornography, or you just stamp it out and make the decision like, okay, look, my life is not going to be ruled by pornography. Like,
that's actually, so I just had a flash of a memory of that 9-year-old, of that incident, of that day. So I remember you coming, we lived in a townhouse.
Yep, I think I know what you're talking about. When I came.
And let me say that one because
Go ahead.
I think I have a little bit of trauma about that still, you know, like, you know, because, you know, you think your baby is never gonna, well, y'all came home from school and I was downstairs exhausted, from work, whatever, but cooking, and I heard you calling for me. You called for me and you said, Mom. I was like, what? Mom, my computer is doing something weird.
Yeah. That kind of virus.
I ran upstairs, you know, and then I'm like, what's going on? And you're showing me the computer with the screens, like, you know, what the computers used to do back then, like, which was like screen like ding, ding, like maybe 20
Pop-ups. Gave my computer STD. Crazy.
20 pop-ups. And I had to try to help you close them out, and you were mortified.
Because that was the shame had taken over me in that moment, because I had become so vulnerable and so exposed, where it's like, man, now I've got to bring my filth that I've been hiding from the entire world to the person who I love the most, my mom. And I still, like, I'm not personally, I think I got over that experience once I gave up the porn. I got over that trauma regarding this experience once I gave up the porn. But at the same time, like, that does something to a young child.
Let me ask
Like,
you this though. Do you remember more of that incident? Like, did I go nuts like
No,
Caribbean mom? I
no.
think I tried very hard. I went into my quiet inside self. I think I remember trying to be like, all the things we tell other people, like,
You weren't
try not to make it a shameful
super big
experience, try
problem.
not to over exaggerate it, which I thought I had in the moment, and I was just hoping for it to go away.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out that way, did it?
No. Things ended up getting worse. Because that's the thing with sexual addictions, and the Bible talks about this a lot. Where it's like lust is never satisfied. So when it comes to pornography, well, lust in general, like even when it comes to relationships with others, you start out with one thing, and it could be something simple like just kissing. You kiss your first girlfriend at the park. You know what I mean? And then it's like, next thing you know, y'all are going at it, and then that goes and it just continues to escalate.
A hunger. It's a hunger.
It's insatiable hunger, though. That's the problem.
And so it's insatiable until we decide. It's like many other things, and we don't want to digress, but like hoarding, overeating,
Gambling.
sugar, gambling.
Even drug addiction.
Exactly.
It's the
drug
same
addiction.
type of thing.
Yeah.
All addictions have this type of insatiable quality
Yeah.
where it's like they have to continue to be fed. They're like a parasite. It's like a mental or spiritual parasite, addictions.
Okay, so thank you for that. Whew, I can feel that. And I, as your mom, I understand that you had to go through your experience, but I so wish, parents, we wish that our kids don't have to,
Of course. I personally am glad that I did go through that experience.
because
If I didn't, then I wouldn't know that watching pornography has such dire consequences. Of course, you want to be like, oh, I wish I'd learned this from wisdom, like learning this from someone else's mistakes rather than having to go through it myself. But going through things on your own and going through them like from an experiential basis, it gives you a type of learning that you can then truly pass down to your children to where they don't have to go through it themselves.
What I was going to ask you was that insatiable wanting, what was it trying to, what was the space it was trying to fill? Like, what was the hunger for? Connection?
Repeat that.
What was the hunger for? What was the hunger? What was
regarding
that?
the porn?
The porn addiction. What was it?
Connection.
Connection.
Because I was a very
love.
wouldn't
Connection.
say love, just connection.
Okay.
Because
like
I had
feeling.
love, no, just connection.
Can you explain more? Like what?
Yeah. So when I was younger, I was very lonely. I'll say that. I grew up not unloved because I grew up with both my mom and my dad in my life. They were, divorced at the time, but and that I think played a big part in the whole loneliness feeling that I had. All the same, it was different. It's different when you don't have both parents in the household. So part of me, I guess, felt wrong. But like I looked at other kids who had like both parents. Like I had a friend named Milton, and he had both of his parents in his life. So it's like I'm looking at one of my best friends at the time in elementary school. I'm just like we're cool, but like what's different or wrong with me that I can't have both my parents in my life, in the same home, because his parents would pull up in the same car, and I'm just like, I'm barely seeing my dad except on the weekends.
Yeah.
So it's one of those situations where it's like that lack of self-esteem from that type of experience, it bleeds into other aspects of other relationships, where it comes to friendship, or your view of yourself.
That's it right there. Your view of yourself. So the child's view of himself was impacted a lot by not having your dad in the house. And like you're saying, even though you went to dad Thursday through Monday, you wanted the experience of having mom and dad in the home, and you had felt that. You had had that experience, so your body
I had
remembered
it for a time, so I remembered that.
Yeah.
You know, but after the divorce, it was kind of like a rift.
Yeah.
My sister, basically said, could you share that experience?
Well, I think what you're talking about is the day that your dad and I sat you and your sister down.
Because I personally cannot remember that experience. That's how I know it traumatized me. Like I dissociated from that experience completely. I was just like, this is too much, bro. This is too much. It was like, man.
You were 5.
I felt some release actually happen as I said that, and I'm feeling it now.
Yeah, you were 5, she was 3, and we were sitting on the couch. We were sitting on the couch in an apartment in Marietta. And he and I, we said, okay, we're going to tell you all then. And so we sat, it was kind of dark. It was not a bright, we didn't have light on. And we said, Mom and Dad, we love you.
Yeah.
The kind of, it feels like platitudes when you think about it. Like the things they tell you to say, reassure the child that, yes, we love you, but Mom and Dad, we're breaking up.
Right.
And so I think that's how we said it. And your sister said, what? We're splitting apart?
That's what I was trying to,
And I felt that. I remember that. We're
It's
splitting apart? Yeah, and she said it in a way that was like, she was describing like flesh.
Tearing off.
apart.
Yeah.
And on a spiritual level, that's really what happened.
Yeah.
Because they say two become one flesh.
Yeah.
And
it's like,
so that was the visual I myself I had from that moment. And you guys were very close to your dad.
Yeah, very close.
Very close. I mean, I used to say that he was not a good husband.
He was a great father. Great
father.
He was a great father.
I could leave and I would leave and go off to California for my education. And I was completely comfortable with him caring for you guys. I'd go off to his trainings and I would be completely comfortable that you all were being cared for because I know how he loved you all and how he cared for you guys. So, yeah, that break of divorce does have a lot of reverberation.
Yeah. A lot. Like it affects a lot. And something like that is very unconscious and subconscious at first. But when it comes to the subconscious mind, if you leave something in the subconscious mind unchecked for long enough, it's going to start pouring out in in ways that other people may be able to notice, but the person who's experiencing that energetic outpour is not able to consciously be aware of yet.
And remember, you all were so young.
We were so young when this
3
happened.
and 5.
I even dissociated from the experience. I'm just now really remembering perhaps the feeling. Maybe that was some of the feeling some of the heat and the dread I was feeling from that time as a young child leaving my body.
Yes. Yes. And that is something we'll talk more about. Divorce, separation, recovering from that, putting yourself back together again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Making that the soul retrieval, that soul reintegration.
Yeah. Stitching yourself back together again. We mentioned earlier, like kids not having the language. You have all these emotions in your body.
Yeah.
But you don't know what it is. You just know this is hell, right? It's overwhelming. But I gotta continue. I gotta go to school and be with Milton. You know what I mean? I gotta go play, but the feeling is still there.
Right.
And how does that manifest as we grow? as you grow, as you get older. So we can't give you all everything in the first session.
Yeah, I don't want to trauma dump on you. Not at all. That's not healthy. But
that's not what we're doing. But
I guess I want to say, with this podcast, we're going to be very real, raw, and uncut. There's a lot of things that I've personally been through that this simple conversation right here has helped me release a lot. Like I physically felt like energy, like hot, like heat leaving my body as I talked about that experience where I found out my parents were going to get divorced, and that same experience is possible for every person watching this video. That's actually what I think soul retrieval feels like, because as something leaves your body, it probably is being replaced by that actual soul fragment, that piece of you that you lost.
And we'll talk about soul retrieval.
We can speak about soul retrieval and all that.
Yeah.
Fragmentation and
reintegration. So, how did you make out from our first conversation? We're hoping that if something in this first episode resonated with you, that you sit with it, that you breathe through it, like you're saying today. You breathe in through your nose, into your belly. Know that you're not alone. You're a human being. You're not alone. You're a human being. And that healing starts at the root. Healing starts at the root. And in fact, that the healing has already begun.
Indeed.
So we hope they like.
Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know how you enjoyed the video. If there was any part that you really enjoyed or resonated. Parts of the video that you think we could work on. Because like I said, we're trying to heal and grow and learn with you all. This isn't just us talking at you about our problems or whatever.
For sure. Like trauma dumping, like you say, trauma dumping. Yeah, that's not the point.
Like, I want to actually grow and learn with y'all and have something, grow from this thing of ours. So.
And by the end of each session, we also want to have offered at least one strategy, one tool that you can use to address at least one issue. And so I'm very thankful that you've offered semen retention as a tool to begin to manage porn addiction.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's helped me break a generational curse off of my life. So I'm hoping it does the same for anyone watching this video. Yeah.
So as we leave, perhaps you can think about what pain in your own family might be a seed of something beautiful, because that thing that was packed and loaded with shame, hopefully from your expressing of it and bringing light to it,
comes back full circle.
That's right. You're offering other people an opportunity to transform their own pain into something purposeful.
Yeah. Transmuting that pain into purpose and passion.
Indeed. So again, thank you all for listening today. I'm Dr. Triffy. I'm the root, and
my name is Teray, and I'm the seed, and this is the seed and the root. We'll see you all again next time. All right, peace.